Is the Minnesota Vikings performance in week 1 sustainable? That's the big question. The Minnesota Vikings didn't just beat the New York Giants. They beat the piss out of them 28-6, and the game didn't really feel close the second the Vikings started getting into the end zone. But the real question is, can they do this all year? Is this maybe not just a punt it year, but they could really do something? There's a lot of questions, and we're not going to have all the answers, but we are going to talk about how much they can sustain this success throughout the course of 17 games. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner, he's producer Dave. Dave, you're looking awfully yellow today.
Yes. Well, it's our secondary color of the team, so
that it is. I'm looking
yellow.
I'm looking awfully black. Well, mainly because this is just one of the more professional looking things I own. And let's be real, I probably shouldn't wear beer t-shirts every time we go live. As much as I love me some Busch Light and PBR, maybe I should calm down a little bit. But we're really excited to have you here today. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast feed. We're going to have a lot more stuff than just me talking and then two old bloggers. We got the postcast. We've got Sal's new show coming. I believe the first episode might be tomorrow on Tuesday.
Yes. Tomorrow morning, we're going to record the first one.
Scolders and Spice. And then we're also going to have some other content coming as well. You're not going to want to miss out on any of it. And it's a good thing to subscribe to both the podcast platform and the YouTube channel, because there will be unique stuff on both that you will not always be able to get. So that is something that you're going to want to make sure you do if you enjoy us, which if you're watching live, I'd assume you do, and we're very grateful for you. So let's talk about multiple factors here. Let's first talk about the Minnesota Vikings getting a 22-point victory, Dave. A 22-point victory against, yes, the New York Giants. And the New York Giants aren't exactly what you would call a good football team. New York Giants are conceptually a good football team, and then you put in the actuality, and Daniel Jones is booty cheeks. And not the kind of booty cheeks where like, hey, nice butt, or the kind of booty cheeks is like, ew.
But a well-paid booty cheeks.
Look, hey, nobody's going to argue about the fact that he's making a lot of money. Good for him for having Ed Donatel fool the New York Giants into paying him $40 million on average per year. But it's the other extenuating factors with the Daniel Jones situation in New York. He just isn't good. And he tore his ACL. And really, the biggest weapon he had, Dave, was his legs. And we talked about it, and I wrote about it. The biggest key to winning the game on defense was to contain Daniel Jones in the pocket, not let him beat you with his legs, because it's similar conceptually to Lamar Jackson. He is not Lamar Jackson. He is not the kind of athlete Lamar is, but if you contain him in the pocket and eliminate the threat of him running, it's going to force him to be one-dimensional, and that's going to make things harder for him to win the football game for you. And the Vikings did just that. It held him to 6 rushes for 15 yards. And along with that, it wasn't just 6 rushes for 15 yards. He didn't really do much outside of that. And the Vikings did a tremendous job in making life harder for him. And kudos to the Vikings. They not just held him in check. Dave, on 50 dropbacks, they got 26 pressures. 5 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
1 sack per 10 dropbacks. That's a pretty damn good rate. If you have a a sack to dropback ratio as a quarterback, you want to keep that around like 2 to 4%, somewhere in there. So the fact that the Vikings had it at 10%.
Hey, the pressure rate at almost 50%, around 50% is huge. It's normally around 30.
52% pressure rate, an astoundingly good number. Now, it's not sustainable. There are some things that are sustainable that we're going to talk about and some things that aren't. And one of the things that when we're trying to be predictive, and that's what, when we're talking about some of like the deeper analytics and trying to understand what is good in like every game. The Vikings in 2022 were what, 11-0 in one-score games? That is not predictive. That is not something that is sustainable year over year. That is a statistical anomaly. Now, it was a fun team to watch, and they were good, but they were not able to sustain that year over year. And last year, I think, what were they? 5-6 or 6-6 in one-score games. Look, it's some things are not sustainable. Now, if they went 0-11 in one-score games, that's not sustainable either. You're going to regress to the mean, and you're going to regress in a positive way. So having some of these things where, hey, they just balled out, take it for what it was. You had a great performance, but we can't expect them to do it every single week. Having a 10% sack rate is astoundingly good. Having a 52% pressure rate, same thing. The Vikings get a 35% pressure rate, which is a lot closer to the normal. I want to say, Dave, that the pressure rate on a league average level is somewhere around 29, 30, 31%. I'd have to look that up to know for sure, but I believe that's where the mark is. If you can just get around there or just above the league average, I think everybody'd be pretty happy with that. And then to convert what I think it was 18.5 or 19% of your pressures into sacks is honestly about average. I think the sack rate is usually around 18 to 20% of your pressures turning into sacks. Pressures are the best stat to have. Sacks are a 100th percentile outcome of a pressure. It's the best outcome. Now, within sacks, a better outcome is a strip sack for a touchdown. That's probably the 100% ideal situation. But there are a lot of things that can happen due to a pressure. You could get a pick six. You could stop a team on fourth down. You could force a punt. There's so many different things that can result because of a pressure, and that's why they're so important. And one of the best players on the field yesterday was Jonathan Grenard. And I think we'll start there. We'll start with the defensive line, because one of the things I'm writing about right now that I'll have out before the end of Monday night is snap counts, Dave.
Okay.
All 5 of the Vikings edge rushers played at least I think 34 snaps. They played those edge rushers a lot. And I believe Luke Braun called it the Hawk package, where it's 4 edge rushers. And one of the reasons why the Vikings can run this is because now they have personnel that fits and suits what Brian Flores wants to do. You have Jihad Ward and Jonathan Grenard, who are both bigger guys, both in weight and length. And you also have those guys who can kick inside. So Jonathan Grenard has insanely long arms. And those long arms make a really, really big impact when you're playing against interior guys. Dave, you are a lineman yourself. Mm-hmm. Length matters a lot when it comes to these linemen. It's not everything. You have Joe Thomas, who had 32.5-inch arms. He's arguably the best tackle that's ever played in the National Football League. And if you don't believe that, you at least are going to hear the argument because of how good Thomas was. Like, that's the kind of player he was. 32.5-inch arms. Should have probably moved inside to guard. At least that's what a lot of people will tell you. But one of the things with line play, it's not everything to have arm length, but it gives you an advantage over every other player that you're going to face. And that's what Jonathan Grenard has. I believe the 35.5-inch arms, it's like a 96th or 95th percentile arm length
up there
for the position. It's bonkers long, and it's going to give him an inherent advantage on every single play. Now, he still has to use them right. He still has to put himself in position to make those plays. But by having the arm length, he has that inherent advantage. And that's one thing we see all the time in boxing and MMA. Arm length and reach is incredibly paramount and important. Now, John Jones, fighting as a light heavyweight for almost his entire career, often would have an 8 to 10 inch reach advantage on his opponent. He could just play with them like they were child's toys because he had such insane arm length. And then his kicks, he could do it from such distance where other guys would have to get inside in the clinch, like the clinch being, hey, get inside my fists. Like you have to get through the arms. Jones could just boop, no problem. Because he had the length, he had that inherited advantage. And that's what the Vikings are working with Jonathan Greenard. And it's why when we talked about Greenard and the defensive line and the pass rush this offseason, Dave, I thought the Vikings might kick Greenard inside a bunch because of that length. And he could attack guards who have 32.5, 33-inch arms because he has that advantage. And he has the power and quickness to be able to bully them. Well, he did a great job on Sunday. He had 5 pressures and accounted for 5 of the 26. So out of every 10 pass rush reps that the Vikings had on Sunday, Jonathan Greenard had 1 pressure. Pretty impressive. A very impressive feat, but because they were able to kick him inside, it makes the defensive line a little bit less important, Dave. Not that it's not important, but you don't need to have a 5th or 6th defensive lineman suited up for game days because, on pass rush downs, guess what? Greenard, you're going to play 3 technique. I'm going to have Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jihad Ward come in. Ward's going to play the other 3 tech spot in either a hand down or stand up role. And I've got 2 speedsters on the outside who I can feel comfortable with dropping into coverage if necessary. All of a sudden, you're looking at a package that gives Brian Flores a lot of different options. And it gives you flexibility to do a lot of things. Plus, let me tell you, Harrison Phillips is a looper and a stunt. So if you guys don't know what the looper and the stunt is, so in a stunt, you have 2 guys, all right? Guy 1 crashes like this. The looper, which is my middle finger, goes around the blocks, all right? So being that you go around the blocks in those situations, would you rather have 315-pound Harrison Phillips, who's not very fast or quick, or would you rather have Dallas Turner, who's got freaky athleticism, speed, and quickness? That's the kind of advantage that you're going to have by having 4 edge rushers on the field. Edge rushers are inherently more athletic and quick and fast. And that's why stunts are now all of a sudden going to become more effective. And you also saw the Vikings blitz significantly less, Dave, because they had that 4 edge rusher package, because they had more players on the field that fit what the Vikings wanted to do. All those factors matter a lot.
They were still showing blitzes. They were messing with Daniel Jones's head a bit, but that's okay. We want that.
Mess around, man. Mess. Do it.
He was never comfortable yesterday.
No.
At all.
You're right. He was never comfortable. And keeping him uncomfortable was one of the most important things on Sunday. That and keeping him in contain. Jones couldn't get his footing. He couldn't do a lot of different things. And I think that matters a lot when you're having a lot of these conversations and when you're having some of those things applied onto the football field. I was really impressed with the defense. That 4 edge rusher package was great. And you had players making plays. Andrew Van Ginkel had the fastest interception over the last 2 NFL seasons. 1.16 seconds by jumping up and intercepting a screen pass. And one of the interesting things about that, usually that player is the drop player in a lot of what Brian Flores wants to do. And he would be the guy to go out and cover that guy in coverage. And that's not how Flores had them play it. Either it was a communication thing, or it was a tell or a check. I don't know how they ended up figuring that out, but I will, say this. That was supposed to be Van Ginkel to go cover the hand to handle that guy. Ivan Pace darted out and was going to be the guy responsible for picking him up. And they threw the screen right away. Van Ginkel sensed it. Didn't just knock it down, caught it and took it about 10 yards for a pick 6. That was the fastest interception since week 13 against the Washington Commanders. when Andrew Van Ginkel did it 1.26 seconds against for when he was with the Miami Dolphins. So maybe we have something with Van Ginkel just understanding how to attack and how to get those and make those plays. That was a really impressive thing. I just
It's a
really
read.
excited about this defense.
It's a read by the outside linebacker / edge. He's reading what's going on both to the left and what's happening in the backfield or not happening in the backfield. And he read it that there was somebody going out there, and he just stood it, took it. I'm going to be here. Quarterback turns around, throws the ball, and goes, ah. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm extra excited about this defense, Dave. I really am. This is an insanely talented group. It's a group that can do a lot of different things, can be really versatile for you. And because of all those things, I can't wait to watch this group. I can't wait to see what happens on a week in and week out basis. And I think there was a lot of different things that this group showed that can be a massive benefit. Didn't notice the corners at all yesterday. Maybe one play, like Byron Murphy got a PBU, I think. Outside of that, the corners as a collective whole were just solid. They weren't letting guys get behind them. They weren't letting people beat them. Coverage busts in the sense I'm using that term where there were wide open receivers. Dig routes at the end of last year, 12-yard deep ins were just an absolute travesty for this team in the last 4 games. They got peppered with them, and they couldn't stop them to save their life. I think I saw one dig route hit. Malik Neighbors got one in like the late third, early fourth quarter. I'm not going to say that that is fixed. I feel better about it now than I did at any point over the last 8-9 months. So that's a step forward. Conceptually, I'm excited to see the direction of this defense because Brian Flores has more of the people that he wants in the room. And because he has more of the people he wants in the room, he can really shape this based on what he wants to do, not what he feels he has to do based on his personnel. And I think that, Dave, is very, very, very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. I think it's going to be fun this year. And like they said in the post game, when somebody asked them about it, some of the players, we didn't even pull everything out of the bag. We still have more stuff. And, as long as you don't have to show it because you're kicking butt, save it for when you do need it, which may be this week against the Niners, but we'll find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to address this comment because this is going to be a part of the next discussion. Chris Sittard said, Kwesi and KOC have crippled the offense by keeping Ingram and Bradbury. I think this is a really important discussion. Ingram and Bradbury are fine. And I want to explain my use of that vernacular because I think my wife and I talk about this a lot, where when I say something is good or fine, she thinks I don't like it, or either I'm really, really excited or really, really down about it, or I just kind of live in that middle zone of like, this is like a 4 to 8 on a scale of 10, where it's just like, it's fine. Like my vernacular can be a little frustrating for that reason sometimes, but I think fine. Like these guys are around average. Bradbury is around an average starting guard in the National Football League. Garrett Bradbury is around an average center. I'd say Bradbury is probably about 20th among starting centers. And I would consider average between like 10 and 20. That it's a bucket of average. Dead average would be 16. So somewhere between 10 and 20, I think it would be fair to call them average. 10 being above average, 20 being slightly below, but average. And then Ingram, I'd put him around guard 32 in the National Football League of 64. Last year, PFF grades, if you want to use that, PFF, he ranked 34th overall, 34th in run block grade, 34th in pass block grade. So he's like the 34th best starting guard And of the guys that qualified, he was 34 of, I think it was 68. So dead average. And one of the more difficult parts about having a nuanced conversation with these guys is Ingram's play style is just going to be inherently frustrating. And I think he's just going to garner more pressures because of that. And he tries to punch you out, and guys take advantage of him. He hasn't quite figured out how to really be multiple with his moves and not really what's kind of the phrasing I'm looking for. It's like a pass rusher that has a pass rush plan. He doesn't have a consistent pass block plan where he has his go-to where it's like, I'm going to punch you out. And if that doesn't work, sometimes he can overextend and lunge where he's waist bending and then he loses all leverage and guys can get around him. Or he punches you, you only get knocked back a little bit and you still make a tackle. I think it's inherently frustrating for fans. I also think a lot of people just look at PFF grades and say, oh, this guy is really bad. No, I had a couple people kind of talk to me about that today. It's like, go watch the film. Like, figure out why was he bad. You know why he wasn't as good on Sunday as other guards in the National Football League? He played arguably the best defensive tackle in all of football. Dexter Lawrence is a disgusting football player. And I mean that in a very complimentary fashion. I would trade our first round pick next year for Dexter Lawrence right now, without hesitation. Dexter Lawrence is, I believe, 26 or 27 years old in his physical prime and an absolute game-wrecking monster. He should not be doing this at about 320 pounds. He is a special football player. And our average interior guys got their asses whooped. They got whooped. And I'm not really concerned about being an issue on a long-term basis. Why? Unless they face the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they're not facing anybody that good the rest of the year. They're not even facing anybody close to that good the rest of the year. Lawrence is on a different level. And you know what? I thought they handled him well enough because after that first sack, for the most part, they contained him enough to be successful. And that's about as good as you can ask for. And one of the tough parts about PFF grades is sample size. Only 26 dropbacks for the Vikings. So when you allow a sack and allow a few other pressures, it craters your numbers. That's not necessarily fair when it comes to looking at an overall picture, but that's how this algorithm is built. And that's what people see. And they see, oh, this guy sucks. This guy's awful. Well, he had a couple wins against Lawrence. He had ones. And Dave, I want to know if you agree with this portrayal of the offensive line. The whole goal of playing offensive line is to lose slowly. Lose as slowly as possible.
Or not lose your rep. It's not necessarily to win your rep. Now, if you're run blocking, you want to win. If you're pass blocking, it's you just don't want to lose. Because if you lose, that causes problems. So you are slowing that process down because eventually you're going to lose. Even Darisaw eventually gets run by. But you want to take the most time delaying all of that to give your quarterback time to throw the football. And obviously yesterday, other than the one sack and the one time when he threw the interception, got hit by Dexter Lawrence on the hand, he had enough time to throw the football. Now, when I start to look at the all-22 tape, I want to look at how the lineman did, and then also look at that compared to how much time did Darnold have to throw the football. Now, this is a problem with especially young quarterbacks. They'll hold on to it too long. And a lineman can't hold his guy for 6 seconds. Sorry. It doesn't happen. You've got to be able to do certain things, and they're going to give way, especially with the bigger guys. We've talked about this for Bradbury in particular, but also whether it be Ingram or Brandel, they're going to be backing up. The tackles they're moving out. It's not I'm holding this square yard of turf and you're not getting by me. That's not how it's played. You can't play it that way. There isn't people out there to play it that way, even if you wanted to. So it is what it is. And so they made, after, what I loved was after that first series where it looked so bad, somebody made an adjustment, whether it was KOC, whether it was Chris Cooper, or whoever it was, they made an adjustment in the blocking, which is what they're supposed to do if something's not working right. That is a super positive sign that we hadn't seen in previous seasons. That's something to be happy about, because after that, hey, how many sacks did Darnold take?
1. And that was on the second play of the game.
Just the one. That was it. How many sacks did we get? 5. 5 or 6. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge difference. Now, I'm not listening to New York Giants fan bases today and see if they're whining about their offensive line. I'm sure they are, but it's a quality O-line play is down across the league. I've gone on about that across the board, but the ones we have, they made the right decision. They did the correct thing and adjusted how they went and played Dexter Lawrence after that, and it worked. That should have fans happy, because we didn't see that before, and we know it didn't happen in the previous regime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this whole idea of the Vikings interior offensive line is awful. I can't get behind that. They're going to get absolutely bitched by elite players. That's always been the case. But they're going to be fine against solid players, against good players. And they're going to whip up on some bad ones. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just where we're going to live.
Well, take Thibodeau from the Giants. How was his game? He went up against Darisaw, and he got schooled. And you're talking about a Pro Bowl level player getting absolutely schooled. And he had one of his worst games. Now, why did he get schooled? Because Darisaw is that good. Why did Bradbury and Ingram have a hard time on the interior? Because Dexter Lawrence is literally that good. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
But they made adjustments.
They did. And I think
that's got me the happiest off the whole weekend.
Those adjustments were really good. And I also think that it's important to talk about Blake Brandel, who was great in his starting debut at left guard. Great. Best PFF grade, incredible PFF blocking grade, great PFF run blocking grade. And I didn't see him. One, I don't think I saw him with a single rep against Dexter Lawrence one-on-one, which is important. Ingram had a bunch. And I think they mitigated that over the course of the game. But that's why Ingram played so poorly, because he was facing one of the best players. And I sound like a broken record with Ingram. Look, he wasn't great, but he was going up against an incredible football player. Like a David versus Goliath kind of situation. And I'm not super down on Ingram like everybody else is. I also think a lot of people who just complain about Ed Ingram don't try to educate themselves on a lot of the nuance with offensive line play, because it's not as simple as a number grade. There are so many other factors, some of which I am not fully 100% knowledgeable of. There's so many things that I'm learning every day, and I'm asking people who are smarter than me to be like, hey, what does this look like? Why? Like, I think this is a win. Why is this not a win? I'm asking those questions because I think it's important to learn and understand, and not just be like, oh, PFF said bad, so bad. I think that's really dangerous in the course of football discussion, having somebody else tell you what your opinion is. No, this is why I talk. Watch the film, get the NFL Plus. And you know what? All 22 actually looks pretty good on that NFL Plus, Dave. I was really impressed watching it today, and the filter function is just bonkers. Very, very impressed. High recommend. Go watch it. Form your opinion. And you know what? If you disagree with me,
I went to look for it this morning. It wasn't up yet. So
okay, so you have to look at it in a different way. You have to go to the pro function, where you can like filter everything, and you can watch the all 22 there. It doesn't have it like in a single file yet under the NFL Plus, but you can watch it right away. So that's something to be aware of. But Brandel, really good inaugural game. We'll see how that continues. I guarantee you Bradbury and Ingram will not have this kind of poor performance over the next few weeks. They will show improvement, which is important to note. And the other element, Dave, we're going to talk about before we kind of not necessarily wrap things up, but the other really big talking point is Sam Darnold.
Who?
Dave. Sam Darnold.
I thought he stunk. That's what everybody was going to tell us, right? He's
Not on this
good.
show. Not on this show. We didn't buy it. We said it was always a possibility he could come in here and stink. But we talked a lot about this. And one of our most watched videos was from this past June, where we broke down the idea, what if Darnold is just really good? What happens? Guess what? Darnold was really good. And I mean, he was really good. And it wasn't just the numbers that were good, Dave. It was the process, the confidence that he had, the willingness to grow and adapt within the context of the game. I came away so impressed with how Darnold played, with how he navigated everything. I thought he was phenomenal. And it's interesting when you kind of look at the whole thing with Sam Darnold, because everybody who talks about Sam Darnold being bad never talks about him being bad because he's not talented. They talk about him being bad because he just doesn't play well, because he doesn't see the field, because he's not confident.
He sees ghosts. He's bad under pressure.
Well, so fun fact, somebody talked to him about the ghost thing. The ghost thing was like an inside joke within the Jets like quarterback room. So that was taken a little bit out of context, but it was having trouble seeing the field. He was 100% honest about that. And I think it's really interesting that he comes in with all the confidence in the world, because he feels like he can do whatever he wants. He can do anything. He feels like when he goes out there, if he throws an interception, guess what? He's just going to be like, hey, this is what we need to fix. And then he gets to go out there and try and fix it. He's not going to have somebody breathing down his neck to start. They don't want to start Nick Mullins. They will. They don't want to. Or if you have J.J. McCarthy, Darnold has a 3-pick game, you're going to have it in the back of your mind, hey, guess what? J.J. McCarthy's coming in. But he's out for the season. And Anthony McDaniel asked it, what do we do if Darnold takes us to the promised land? If Sam Darnold wins the Vikings the Super Bowl, he's not going anywhere. At that point, look, I'm going to be real here. If Sam Darnold wins the Vikings the Super Bowl, nobody will care about J.J. McCarthy. And that's not fair to him.
Well, they'll care, but
are you going to give up on a guy who literally just won you the Super Bowl? This isn't like the 2000 Ravens that let Trent Dilfer go after they won the Super Bowl. Ray Lewis and that defense won them the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold would be a key catalyst in winning the Vikings their first Super Bowl. At that point, J.J. McCarthy and where he's at in his development does not matter. You're going to keep Sam Darnold because he just won you the Super Bowl. So, if you want like more details on kind of that, Dave, if you would be so kind to drop that link in the chat about the Sam Darnold really good video. I highly recommend, Anthony, that you and everybody else go watch that, because we give a really nuanced discussion about what they could and should do if Darnold ends up being really, really good, because I think that's an interesting factor in all of this. But
now,
Darnold,
what I would suggest, if he gets us that far, sit back and enjoy it, and let's worry about it then rather than now, which is just And this is the big cautionary tale from yesterday. Yesterday was just 1 week. Week 1. Looks good, looks promising. Let's put another one forward. Take it like players say, one game at a time. And if he gets us all the way there at that point in time, we'll worry about that and debate that ad nauseum at that point. But it would be fantastic.
I know. All right, let's kind of talk about some of the nuances around why Darnold was really good and confident. And some of that has to come from Justin Jefferson, who spoke with Ben Gessling before the season started about having his quarterbacks with more confidence. And the reason why he's talking about that is like, hey, if I'm double covered, I'm open. Just trust me. So that was something that Kirk Cousins didn't have all the time, and you kind of saw that. I'm pulling up the quote here from Jefferson in that article. He said, it's going to be different, not having Cousins. But I want it to be the same for them to have the confidence in me to go and make a play, just like Kirk did in those opportunities in those situations. I low-key want them to have more confidence than what Kirk had. Kirk is more comfortable in the system with him running it earlier on in Washington. To give them an extra boost and extra confidence, I want to go up and make a play for them whenever they give me the chance, end quote. If he's doubled, he's open. And having that element is really important because now guess what? If Darnold just say, hey, I don't really have anything open. I've got Justin Jefferson with double coverage on the outside. Just chuck it up to Jefferson. Let him make a play. He's going to make it more often than not because he's Justin Jefferson. Vikings did that with Randy Moss. Guess what? Dave, that worked out pretty well. Doing that with Randy Moss. Jefferson's a different type of player than Randy Moss, but the same type of alpha. And I think that's important. It's important to be able to trust that player. It's important to be able to make those positive impact decisions. And the Vikings, they have themselves a quarterback who's willing to do that. And you saw over the course of the game and training camp some of those confidence things and some of that chemistry. Because early on, you could tell Darnold was just missing some throws because he didn't know where some guys were going to be on certain routes. Well, guess what? That's why you have training camp, because that's how you figure some of that stuff out. You figure out how deep Jefferson is going to run his dig route. You figure out how he's going to cut it off or if he's going to round it and maybe go at a 12-yard dig route, get up to like 13 yards in depth before he comes back a little bit. You're going to find all that out. You're going to learn that nuance and you're going to know where to put the ball every single time. That matters. It matters a lot. And to have the confidence in your guys to be able to do those things is important. And Darnold had the confidence in his receivers. And he had the confidence in his line. He had the confidence in himself. And that element of confidence, Dave, was the reason the Vikings ended up getting the win. Can that be sustainable? I don't know. There are people who are severely confident in themselves and their abilities. There are people who believe they are going to be the guy every single time. There are people who believe that they're going to win the Super Bowl every single year. Cornerbacks, not quarterbacks, cornerbacks have the most bizarre element of confidence of any position in sports. Why? You have to be that confident in yourself to get your butt beaten as many times as they do in the course of a game. Even the best cornerbacks get beat multiple times a game. They lose. You have to be able to be confident in yourself. And guess what? Darnold has a level of confidence right now that is sustainable. But that doesn't mean he will sustain it. And I think that's an important factor here. If he can sustain that level of confidence and continue to grow with this team in this organization, grow with his teammates and keep building that chemistry, because that chemistry is not in the 100th percentile. It's not. It's in a good place, but chemistry keeps growing and getting better. The best chemistry I think I've ever seen with a quarterback and a receiver was Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. We saw those guys play a lot of football, and they were, Dave, annoying as hell. Why were they so annoying? Because it didn't matter. They could just find a way to hit a route down the field, get a first down. Those stop routes, those stop fades, haunted me for years because of how just easy they made them look. It was just taking candy from a baby, to use that metaphor. It was really impressive. And Darnold has the ability to continue to build on some of these things and build with his teammates. And we're going to be in a really good spot once that happens. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what these guys do in week 2. I can't wait to see what the San Francisco 49ers team looks like after an offseason of insanity. Holdout from Brandon Ayuk, nearly traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the day he signed his extension. Trent Williams doesn't come back until after Ricky Pearsall gets shot and says that was the catalyst for him returning. And Ricky Pearsall got shot because somebody was trying to rob his Rolex. Like, it's just a bonkers offseason. And then there's a beat reporter for the 49ers who was saying that they're hearing from inside the organization, if they don't win the Super Bowl, Shanahan and Lynch could be fired. It's just a wild time in San Francisco right now.
Really?
And there was just one guy, I don't know if it was ever corroborated, but it was Grant Cohn, and his dad is like a legacy reporter in the San Francisco area. So it's not like he doesn't know people. It was just interesting to kind of hear that as a whole. So it's interesting in San Francisco right now. They're in year 3 of Brock Purdy, and do they pay him? That's going to be a big one. Do they pay Brock? Man, I don't know. I really don't know.
We know that Niner Sickness is a friend of the Vikings First and SKOL, and he runs his own channel for the Niners. He has said that, yes, there are fans that have talked about, hey, you got to win the Super Bowl. You don't win the Super Bowl, you're lousy. And it's just like, you guys have been, what, 3 times in 5 years? Yeah, but we haven't won since, young. We need to win a Super Bowl. And I go, boo, hoo, hoo.
Different levels of expectations. And look, this Vikings team, I think, can beat anybody. That does not mean they will. And one of the interesting parts about this team is, the running game actually looked good. Aaron Jones averaged over 7 yards a carry.
Right, Northfius?
And one of the big parts that we talked about was, well, why aren't the Vikings running the football more on a regular basis? Well, we told you. They did not trust, Kevin O'Connell did not trust a running back enough. Well, guess what, Dave? He trusts Aaron Jones. He trusts Ty Chandler. And they kept pounding the rock, and it was successful. The best part is, Jones only had 14 carries, I believe 17 total touches. That is sustainable week in and week out to get him that many touches and still expect him to be a contributing factor down the stretch run.
And he almost got his 100 yards on the ground.
That close. They tried. Kevin O'Connell even said post-game.
Yeah, but he also said, this is your last shot. I'm going to pull you out. So he did. Mm-hmm. About the run game, Northfius.
Yeah. Lastly, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room, and I know Dalton mentioned it earlier in the chat. Dave, isn't it great to not have Kirk Cousins anymore?
And hey, I wish the Atlanta Falcons fans all the joy and success that comes with Kirk Cousins.
Oh,
because
Dave.
We knew it was heading that way. And they only had him under center 4% of all the plays. We all know Kirk Cousins works exceedingly well under center. He does not work as well in shotgun or in pistol. And it doesn't quite look, which I said was going to be a problem. I don't think his Achilles is going to be 100%, and it didn't look it yesterday. It's still in the recovery mode. So we're going to see. And we're going to see, hey, Aaron Rodgers tonight, and he's had a longer time to heal on how his looks. But we're going to see with, older quarterbacks that take severe injuries like that, and those are severe. But I'm happy for Atlanta. They got what they wanted. And I'm just glad it's not us.
I think the really important thing with the Kirk Cousins thing is we got out of it when we needed to. We got out of it at the right time because of the Achilles injury. And we talked about it where I was genuinely worried if his base was going to be compromised forever because of that Achilles. He's 36. Dave, when you get older, it's harder to recover. Your body just does not have the stamina that it once was. It does not have the ability to recover fast. And the Achilles is arguably the worst injury you can have to come back from.
Any tendon is, because tendons don't get a whole lot of blood flow.
But it's also worse with the Achilles because that is the base of all your explosiveness in your lower half. Both Achilles tendons. It's why guys who are really fast don't ever return to that level of speed. It's when you're generating power as a quarterback, it's kind of like basketball. Yeah, you have arm strength. Most of your arm strength comes from your base. It comes from how you utilize your lower half and flipping your hips and doing all of those things. If you are Kirk Cousins, you don't have the strongest arm. You have an above average arm. At best, it's probably like a 7.5 out of 10. It's not a detriment, but it's not a game-changing level of arm strength either. It's plenty good enough. I think that's a really good way to frame it. Well, it's also intriguing that they were changing his footwork at 36 years old. Luke Braun pointed that out to me. I'm like, what? Why are you changing his footwork? Doesn't make any sense. He's 36. You do that with a 24-year-old. They're doing that with J.J. McCarthy right now. Hey, you do this. I want you to have your left foot forward in shotgun. Okay, you could do that with a young kid. Why are you doing that with a wily veteran? And the only thing I can think of is they knew the Achilles was bad enough where they needed to mitigate how much he moved. And I think that's why 96% of his snaps were in pistol or shotgun. Not great.
It is what it is. We got out at the right time. Now, Atlanta fans, they're going to start to hear the excuses that the O-line wasn't good enough, the wide receivers wasn't good enough, it wasn't schemed good enough, all the other stuff that we've heard for years. I wish them luck. Honestly, I do. I wish, Atlanta's not a storied franchise. They've had their hiccups as well. Now, I don't like them the fact that 98, but anyways, it is what it is. I'm just glad we moved on, and I'm happy we moved on, and I'm happy we found a franchise quarterback, and I'm happy we found the transition quarterback in between that just went out and had an outstanding day.
There we go. The Vikings are in a good spot. The Falcons may have to play Michael Penix Jr. before they're ready, but we'll find out. And that is going to be our show. Programming note: there will be no live show on Wednesday. I will be taking a little bit of a break. I have some personal stuff. Wife and I are going to go take care of some things. We're okay. No need to worry, but just some personal stuff. We're going to do that. But that also means you're going to get a show on Thursday leading up to Thursday Night Football of Dolphins and Bills. So you're still going to get 2 shows this week. It's just going to be a little bit modified. No Wednesday. Yes, Thursday. And don't forget, 2 Old Bloggers is back on Saturdays. And because of the timing that they have, it's paramount that you guys not only subscribe, but also put the ring the bell and put the notifications on, because it's going to tell you when that show is going to be. Sometimes it's at 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. I've even seen it as early as 1 p.m. You never know if those old
as
farts.
10 a.m. before, but
Yeah.
we'll find out.
You never know with those old farts what they're going to do. Make sure that's on because you don't want to miss it.
I want to say hello to Roman. He's from the San Antonio Vikings group just down the road, and he's hopped in to watch, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, that is our show. We're going to be back on Thursday. Tonight, enjoy Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully he gets more than 4 plays. Rodgers getting his NFL debut, or season debut, excuse me, with the New York Jets, taking on the 49ers.
And don't worry, we've got shows between now and then because we have Sal, Spice. We have probably more Vikings daily openers, which I did 2 back-to-backs talking about the Sam Darnold project. So we got content running. Just keep your watch, both on YouTube and on your podcast feed, because there's stuff that goes over there that doesn't show up on YouTube.
Yes, sir. With that, thank you guys very much for joining. Enjoy being 1-0. I'm Tyler. Here's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone.